So hello everyone, we're doing MP4 Steganography. So what is steganography? Steganography is the practice of concealing data within data in order to hide its existence, while cryptography is the practice of encrypting data in order to encrypt the data to make the data unreadable. So while cryptography, you know the data is there, but you just can't understand it. With steganography, you don't know the data is there. So for the methods of steganography, there's three methods, and the first is insertion, and as its name implies, you're inserting data into the carrier file, and it's the method that we're going to be focusing on today. One thing to keep in mind with insertion is that when you're inserting data, you are increasing the file size, so it is important to take that in mind so you don't raise suspicion. The next method is substitution, and this method typically is the use of replacing the least significant bit, and typically does not increase file size. And then the last is generation, and in this one, you pretty much tailor the carrier file to contain the hidden data, usually through the means of a pattern. So why MP4 steganography? Well, in general, videos are larger than text, image, and audio files, so they make a good carrier because they pose a potentially good file to carry more data. And the MP4 file is one of the most popular video formats and is actually the recommended video format by one of the largest online video sharing websites, which is YouTube. So we're going to look at an interesting tool called TCSteg, which performs a VeraCrypt and MP4 merge, and we will go into it in more detail of how it works, but just for a general idea, know that it is inserting a logical encrypted volume into the media data of an MP4 file without affecting the quality of the file, so you won't see changes in the video or the audio. So a little bit about MP4. It was created by the Moving Pictures Experts Group, and it is a multimedia file that can store audio, video, text, and images. And it could also store advanced content such as 3D graphics and menus for user interactivity. So why MP4? Because it offers better compression compared to other video files like AVI, so you can maintain good quality while keeping a low file size. And it is derived from the QuickTime atom structure developed by Apple, which works in a hierarchy. So an atom is a basic data unit, and it's used for organizational purposes. So here we have the structure of an MP4 container, and there's three required atoms for the container. There's FTYP, which is located right here, and it just determines the type of file. There's MOOV, which you see right here, and it is the media header, which contains metadata on how to handle the file. And it also contains subatoms, since it works in a hierarchy. So we'll have the movie header, we'll have a track header, and just so for the purposes of this example, just know that we removed one of the tracks, the audio track, so that we could see this better since it gets pretty nested. And so in the track header, in the track atom we have track header and a media atom, and the media atom contains a media data header, which also contains media data information, such as the video media header and more data information. And then we finally get to the sample table, which contains more metadata to know how to handle the video file. And one in particular that I'm going to point out is STCO, because we will be talking about it later on. And this is an atom that determines the chunk offset, so of the start of the media samples. And then finally, we get to the media data atom, MDAT, which is a chunk of the file that contains all the media. And another note is that in these atoms, the only requirement is that FTYP comes before MOOV and MDAT, and MDAT and MOOV can be interchanged. So a little bit about TrueCrypt and VeraCrypt. VeraCrypt is a fork of the discontinued TrueCrypt, so we'll be using these terms interchangeably. And essentially what this tool does, it allows you to create a logical encrypted volume it performs on-the-fly encryption, which means that it encrypts the data right before saving it and decrypts it right as it's opening it. It supports a variety of encryption, and it can create hidden volumes, so you can have an outer volume and then an inner volume contained within that outer volume. So that essentially is providing steganography by itself, because you're hiding data within data, and they're both encrypted, so you're also providing cryptography. And one cool thing about TrueCrypt and VeraCrypt is that the entire volume is encrypted from the header to the empty space and the data that's contained in it. So you may be asking, if it's all encrypted, how does it open the file? So the outer volume will always reside in the location of 0 to 65 kilobytes, and it'll look there when it's trying to open the file. And the inner hidden volume will reside between 65 to 131 kilobytes, so that's where it'll look. And another interesting thing is, like, if you have ever opened or looked at encrypted and encoded data, they both look like random garbage, so it's hard to differentiate them. So now we'll talk about the tool that is used. It's called TCSteg, and it is a Python script developed by Martin Fiedler and Vladimir Ivanov. So the script creates a hybrid MP4 and VeraCrypt container. And here we're going to explain how the script works. So you'll have your MP4 file, FTYP, MDAT, and MOV, and we will have the outer volume, and you need to have an inner volume created. So how it works is it merges the files, and essentially it strips the outer volume header, and it also strips the volume header during the insertion process. It fills in fake data up to the point where the hidden volume could rest on the 64K start, so that once the media is selected to open, it knows where to look. And then followed by the hidden volume data. And it essentially moves the real media data to the end of the hidden volume. And since MOV has STCO, which we mentioned earlier, which references the chunk offset at the start of the table, the script changes where the start is, so that it moves it to the media to the end of the hidden volume, and it just pretty much skips the insertion that we made. So this is a pretty interesting tool, because a lot of other tools insert right at the end, and it makes it easier to detect. So now we're going to pass it over to Anthony to talk about how we may be able to detect this type of tool.
So for our Steg analysis, we're only going to consider certain types of files that we're looking at. So the first thing we're going to look at is files that are arranged where the atoms are FTYP, MDAT, and then MOV. So you're not going to be able to hide a volume in an MP4 file where the MOV comes before the MDAT. And this will make more sense as we go along in our presentation. Another thing is we're looking for data in the 64 kilobyte range to 128 kilobyte range. Again, along with what Alfredo was saying, there's always a header there. And again, this is going to make more sense as we continue on. Further, we have 4 methods that we can actually look into that Fiedler actually recommend looking at. And we're going to start off with the first method, which is actually looking at the stream sizes of the data in an MP4 file. So in an MP4 file, you're going to have an audio stream and you're going to have a video stream. Sometimes you'll even have a text stream if it's like a subtitled video. And each of those streams is going to take up a certain amount of data. So we used a tool called Media Info. Media Info is just an open source tool that can get you a bunch of information about an MP4 file, tell you how it was encoded, the file size, a ton of information that you probably don't care about. But what it does tell you is the stream sizes of each stream. So if we look at the streams in these 2 files, we see that one of them is, we have the audio stream and the video stream, and both of them add up to 100% because this is a clean file. And in a dirty file, the Stego file, we actually see they don't add up to 100%. So that's pretty interesting, because that means that there's a possibility that something's being hidden in the MDAT. So this method's pretty cool, but it's not really accurate. It's really easy to test, and I'd say if you were going to perform an analysis of any MP4 file, this is where you should start. But if you have a really large MP4 file and you have a really small volume, you're not really going to see a big discrepancy in that percentage, and it might be just inaccurate. Also, in smaller containers, that percentage isn't always accurate for the clean file. You might have some data in the MDAT that's like padding or just random text that the encoder adds in, and it's going to throw off those numbers too. So the second method that Fiedler actually recommends to do is looking for repeating strings later in the file. The problem with doing this is when Ivanov updated the script, he removed any references to duplicate encoder signatures. So that kind of made this method kind of useless to perform. On the flip side, if you actually perform this method, you're going to have to do a logis substring search, and it's going to take forever. So we didn't really investigate into this method just because we felt like it wasn't really worth our time, because there's two other methods that are way more interesting. So the next method we looked into was actually looking for the first chunk of media data within the MDAT. So Alfredo was talking about the STCO, and what the STCO actually is it's a reference table for all the media info within the MDAT. So it'll tell you, like, oh, this is where the first chunk of data is, this is where the second chunk of data, and there's an STCO for both audio and video, and if you have another stream for whatever that stream is. So what we did was, first of all, we found a tool that actually tells us where the first STCO is. And it's called IsoViewer. It's just a MP4 video viewer. It gives you a really verbose display of all the information, all the metadata within a video file. And what we used it to do was just find the first chunk. And in this file, we see that the first chunk is located at 917504. And we'll get into why that number is significant in just a second. Then we wrote a Python script because we got lazy and we just wanted to run the file through. And it worked out pretty well. It works with 32-bit files. We're still working on getting it to work with 64-bit files, because the file structure in MP4 is different between 32-bit and 64-bit. But let's get to why this number is so important. So in an MP4 file, we have it has steganography in it. We're going to have this hidden volume in there in the MDAT. In addition to that, we're also going to have the volume. We know that the smallest size volume is 40 kilobytes, and that puts us at about the 168th kilobyte of the file. So anything larger than that, we could say, or anything smaller than that, we could say, oh, there's definitely a header in this area. So what our point is that if you find out that the first chunk in the MDAT is taking place somewhere after that 168th kilobyte, there's a good chance that there might be a hidden volume in there. So the last method we actually went into was trying to figure out if we could analyze the TrueCrypt VeraCrypt header. And we weren't really sure, like, how do you compare compressed data and encrypted data? How can you confirm, like, this is compressed data and this isn't, this is purely random data? Well, we found one tool online that was for analyzing TrueCrypt volumes, and it's called TC-Hunt. And what TC-Hunt does is it analyzes file headers, it analyzes the mod of the file, and it analyzes the file size. In addition to that, like, those three methods don't really do anything for us because the file header is going to be an MP4 file, so that already messes that up. The mod of the file in the any type of TrueCrypt VeraCrypt volume, the mod of the file is always going to be 512 because that's the file structure of it. All the chunks are 512, or they're 1024 actually. The smallest chunk you can have in a VeraCrypt TrueCrypt volume is 1024. So they said if the mod of the file 512 is 0, then that means that, oh, it could be a VeraCrypt TrueCrypt volume. But that doesn't work in MP4 because the size can vary. But with chi-squared, we could do a statistical analysis of our volume. So this is going to be really mathy. I'm not going to lie. What we're actually looking at is we're trying to compare two sets of data and seeing if they relate. So I'm going to give an example that's going to make this a lot easier. Say your friend has a die and you think it's loaded. Every time he rolls it, it kind of always lands on the sixth side of the die, or lands on the side of the die that you think like, oh, this die might be loaded. So you take the die from him and you decide you're going to do a statistical analysis of it. And you roll it 60 times. And in that 60 times, you record, oh, this is how many times it lands on this side, this is how many times it lands on this side, and all that. So you expect it to land 10 times on each side. But what you find is it landed 12 times, or 14, or 15, or 16, or 20, or more. So what we can do is we can determine what the chi-square value of that statistical analysis gave us. So if our die was perfect and we got 10 rolls for every side, we would get a chi-square value of 0, which means that for 100% certainty, those two sets of data relate. As we see that it starts weighting towards one side more, we're going to see that the chi-square value increases. So here's our chi-square distribution chart. And what you can see is that at the very top here, we have like 12 rolls to one side. We're still at like 99%. But as we go down the curve, you see that the values go all the way down to like 6% for 20 rolls. But even at 6%, you still have statistically significant data. And what that means is, even if you're above 5%, you could say like, oh, these two sets of data could relate. That's still within like some means of standard deviation that these two sets of data could relate. So what we did was we decided to do an analysis of the TrueCrypt header, VeraCrypt header, where we expect it to be, plus 40 kilobytes, because we know that if there is a volume there, it's going to be encrypted data, and it's going to be at least from 64 kilobytes to 168 kilobyte range in the file. So we considered this. We knew what our expectation values were going to be. We knew that our degrees of freedom were going to be 256, because that's the total number of variables you could have in a 8-bit byte. So what we did was we wrote a script in Python that would give us the chi-square value of a file in that range. And here's our chi-square distribution chart, just so you see it before we apply the data. So we're looking for chi-square values somewhere between over 190 and greater than, or well, less than anything between like 300 and 0. But you're never going to get a file that's even smaller than, larger than 190. So we ran it across 4 videos just to show you guys. And you should see, first of all, is our video hidden got 264. This clean video called dog.mp4 got a huge number. Our clean video got 250, and our other Stego video got 240. So first of all, the clean video, the reason we're getting such a high number is there's no data in that area. This video is actually just has padding and zeros in that range. So you're going to get a ridiculously high number for that value right there. And that right away tells you that this is not a Stego video. While these other 3 videos, they kind of give you this opinion, oh, like this clean video might be encrypted data. It's not. It's encoded data. It's a regular MP4 video. The other 2, those are encrypted data, and they registered on the chi-square distribution chart. So what chi-square actually does for us is it doesn't tell us that a file is encrypted. It just tells us, it gives us a null hypothesis. And what that means is that we're looking to prove that data does relate, or data doesn't relate, really. So we know that that other video doesn't relate to what we'd expect to see in encrypted data. So in conclusion, we think I think there are methods to detect TCSteg. And I think in general, like MP4 Steganography still is kind of a new area. There's still a lot more things that can be done, but I think that it's really hard to do substitution steganography right now because there's so many different types of encoders out there. There's so many different formats. Even if you have an encoder for the video format, you might not have the same encoder for the audio format. And there's still a lot of interesting stuff to do with the insertion techniques because there's so much stuff you can put into the MDAT. That's what kind of makes MP4 steganography interesting, is that it's still like MP4 files are just this open file that developers love to work with because they can do pretty much anything they want with it. They can make 3D files. They can do subtitle files, and I think there's a lot of interesting things that people could do with them if they give it a chance. So hopefully in the future we'll see some more interesting steganography coming out of MP4. But we'd like to hear your questions.
So if the file has steganography on it, is it going to generally be smaller than the clean video, or can it have padding in this thing?
So the stego file always is going to be larger. It's always going to be seen as a larger file because adding the volume is going to increase the size. It's going to increase the size of the MDAT.
Okay, so this is all about hiding stuff in the header, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if somebody hides data in the data itself of the video?
So I haven't found any tools that do that yet, and I think it's just difficult because there's a lot of different encoder schemas out there right now, and I think it's really hard to have one tool that does everything. With that said, I think it could be possible if you had a decoder, and then you could use like a JPEG stego schema on the individual files within the video, or you could use MP4 steganography on the MP4 part if there's MP4 audio in there. The problem is that you're never sure what you're going to have in an MP4 file. You could have MP4, you can have MP3 data in there. You could have ACC data. You could have lossless compressed data. You could have lossy compressed data. It's really kind of like all over the place.
What you're saying is that if I want to hide stuff, if I had it in the data itself, nobody's ever going to find it.
Not now, just because, there aren't any tools that do it yet. But if somebody develops it, yeah, it's going to be difficult to detect that. Maybe do a statistical analysis of the files. You might be able to detect something significant in there.
There are some extremely, the way MP4 frames are compressed and the way MP4 audio is compressed using MP3, which you're going to hear about next, they're incredibly complex compression schemes. And so it's not just a matter of replacing a bit or something of that nature. And I guess I can't emphasize that. Boy, is it not just a matter of replacing a bit. There's just a lot that going on, and you might get a little hint of that in the next talk.
Yeah.
But it's really tough, and nobody has dealt with it yet that we know of anyway.
It's not just compressed data with the video. It's actually, there's like reference frames within the video. You'll have like 2 frames in some compression schemas that actually, like, you'll have the real frame and then something else and then the other real frame. And what's happening in between those frames is kind of just reference data of what the compression algorithm kind of just does for it. It only like compensates for like the changes in the image between those 2 video files or those 2 images, and that really kind of complicates things for like steganography, because you can't just add bits to that, because it could just screw up the entire image, because you have just like these in between reference frames, and it's really weird. It is. There's not a lot of information on the internet about the encoders and decoders because there's just so many of them. And as it is, there's really not a lot of information about MP4 online. A lot of like the good material you'll find is written by companies who are selling security cameras or other just like weird software. Even the ISO standards weren't really that great to use as reference.
One of the problems with MP4 is that it succumbs to the old line about the nice thing about standards is there's so many to choose from, and that's part of the problem.
Any other questions?
No,
That's good.
thank you.